Viewer discretion is strongly advised. This account is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It details verbatim federal courtroom testimony from the trial of Sean Diddy Combs, as reported by Inner City Press. A federal courtroom.
Grave accusations.
Then, an unexpected discovery changed everything. Not a witness statement, not a victim's testimony. It was Diddy's own words, found inside a burnt safe, recovered from his Miami mansion, just hours before the mansion mysteriously caught fire. This diary was never meant to be found. It was hidden behind a false wall, locked in a reinforced safe. These handwritten pages held what prosecutors called the most damning evidence in entertainment history. The final entry, dated just one day before Diddy's arrest, was more than a confession. It was a detailed account. It exposed an entire network, a network reaching the highest levels of entertainment, politics, and law enforcement. When the judge began reading these words aloud, Diddy's composed facade crumbled. His eyes widened. Disbelief. His fingers gripped the table. Knuckles turned white. For the first time since his arrest, the music mogul looked truly afraid. What was in that final entry? Who were the names listed in what prosecutors called the protection circle? Why did the judge immediately order the courtroom cleared of all recording devices? The moment he reached the last page. This is not just a trial. It is the unraveling of an empire built on secrets. Secrets never meant to see the light of day. The full story begins with that burnt safe. It ends with words so shocking they might change the entertainment industry forever. I am standing outside the Manhattan Federal Courthouse. A shocking moment in legal history just unfolded here. The atmosphere is electric. Reporters frantically call editors. Legal experts struggle to make sense of it. It started like any other trial day. Lawyers arranged papers. The gallery filled. Reporters and spectators. Diddy sat with his defense team. He looked confident, despite serious charges. The judge called court to order. Prosecutors announced new evidence. Everything changed then. 2 FBI agents wheeled in a burnt metal safe. Its exterior was blackened and warped. From extreme heat, testimony revealed it was from a hidden room in Diddy's Miami mansion, just hours before fire destroyed much of the property. The timing was not coincidental. Prosecutors suggested arson, a deliberate act to destroy evidence. But this safe had already been removed during an earlier raid. Inside this safe, the lead prosecutor announced, "We found a handwritten diary." He continued, "It belongs to the defendant, Sean Combs. This diary contains detailed accounts of criminal activities, spanning over 2 decades, including names, dates, and locations." The courtroom fell silent. Diddy's expression shifted, from confusion to shock to something darker, rage mixed with fear. His lead attorney objected immediately, claiming the diary was not in discovery. It should not be admissible. The judge overruled. Prosecutors explained. It had only been processed by forensics that morning. The diary was presented to the judge. A leather-bound book, charred edges, mostly intact pages. He began reviewing it silently. First, his expression grew troubled. With each turned page, about halfway through, he stopped. He looked up at the packed courtroom. He made an unprecedented decision. "Given the sensitive nature of this evidence," he announced, "I will be reading relevant portions aloud for the record. However, certain names will be redacted for now, pending further investigation." Diddy leaned forward. His usual composed demeanor cracked. Beads of sweat formed on his forehead. His attorney placed a restraining hand on his arm, as if afraid Diddy might lunge. The gallery leaned in collectively, reporters poised with pens. The judge adjusted his glasses. He began to read from the final entry. No one was prepared for what came next. "The diary begins with entries dating back to 1999, the judge explained. He provided context. The earlier pages establish a pattern of behavior. It directly relates to the charges in this case. According to the judge's summary, the diary did more than chronicle Diddy's rise to fame. It methodically documented how he built a system of influence, control, and protection. Early entries described his methods, how he identified vulnerable artists, documented their weaknesses, used that information to maintain control. There were detailed accounts of freak-off parties. Guests were secretly recorded in compromising situations, creating what Diddy referred to in his writings as insurance policies. The diary was not just a confession. It was a blueprint for how Diddy built his empire, not solely on musical talent, but on fear, blackmail, and strategic alliances with powerful figures in entertainment, business, and politics. As the court listened, the judge described how the diary entries evolved. What started as ambitious notes from a hungry music producer transformed into the calculated records of someone who saw people as assets to be leveraged. There were lists of loyal soldiers. They carried out his orders without question. There were pressure points for those who resisted his influence. One particularly disturbing section detailed how Diddy operated. He would identify promising young artists, isolate them from supportive relationships, create financial dependency, then use their careers as leverage to ensure compliance. The diary contained a chilling phrase. It appeared repeatedly. Once they're in the family, they never leave the family. Prosecutors explained. The diary corroborated testimony from previous witnesses. They described feeling trapped in Diddy's orbit, afraid that crossing him would mean not just the end of their careers, but potentially their safety. FBI forensic experts testified. The diary was authentic, based on handwriting analysis, paper dating,
ink composition.
They confirmed it belonged to Diddy, and that attempts had been made to destroy it. In the fire, this suggested consciousness of guilt. What made the diary particularly valuable? As evidence, it connected previously isolated incidents into a clear pattern of behavior. Names that had appeared throughout the investigation now showed up in Diddy's own handwriting, confirming relationships he had previously denied under oath. As the judge continued summarizing the contents, the courtroom atmosphere grew tense. Diddy's legal team appeared distressed, visibly huddling together, passing notes frantically. One of his attorneys requested a recess. The judge denied it. The court will proceed with the final entry, the judge stated firmly, which was written on the evening before Mr. Combs's arrest. He turned to the last written page. The courtroom fell completely silent. The final entry is dated March 24, 2025. The judge began. His voice echoed in the silent courtroom. I will read it verbatim, with only certain names redacted. He cleared his throat. He began reading Diddy's own words. Meeting with redacted didn't go as planned. He says the heat is too much. Now that the federal investigation can't be stopped anymore. After everything I've done for him, all the campaigns I funded, all the parties I supplied, now he acts like we're strangers. Loyalty means nothing anymore. Got word that redacted is talking to prosecutors. After 15 years of keeping her comfortable, keeping her relevant, this is how she repays me. She knows everything about the Miami and Hamptons operations. She was there. She participated. Now she wants immunity. There are no victims here, only willing partners who now want to save themselves. The safe houses need to be cleared out. Told redacted to wipe the security systems and move everything to the offshore accounts. The drive with the recordings needs to disappear. Too many recognizable faces there. Too many people who can't afford to be connected to what happened in those rooms. Redacted called from LA. Says there's a grand jury being convened. Someone talked. I made it clear what happens to people who talk. Made some calls to remind certain individuals what we have on them. The protection circle needs to hold strong now. We've survived investigations before. We've made problems disappear before. If this diary is ever found, which it won't be, Let me make something clear. I built this empire. I created kings and queens. From nothing. Their careers, their fame, their wealth. All because of me. They owe me everything. And they know what happens when debts aren't paid. The system is designed to protect people like us. Law enforcement, judges, prosecutors. So many of them have been to the parties, taken the gifts, enjoyed the benefits of being in my circle. They can't touch me without touching themselves. Tomorrow I meet with redacted to finalize the contingency plan. If things go bad, the dead man's switch gets activated. Everyone goes down together. No one gets to walk away clean. While I take the fall. The list is in the secondary location. 43 names. Videos for each one. Financial records. Text messages. All of it. That's always been the insurance policy. That's why I've survived this long. Because they know if I go down, I'm taking everyone with me. As the judge finished reading, he looked up at the courtroom. Diddy sat motionless, his face drained of color. His lead attorney had his head in his hands. The entry continues with a list of names, the judge said. At this time, these names will remain sealed, as they are subject to ongoing investigation. However, the court notes, many of these individuals occupy positions of significant influence in entertainment, politics, and law enforcement. The prosecutor stood. Your Honor, we would like to enter this diary as Exhibit 47 and request that the defendant's bail be immediately revoked. In light of this new evidence, which clearly demonstrates both consciousness of guilt and potential witness tampering, Diddy's attorney jumped to his feet. Objection. This document cannot be authenticated on the spot. We need time to examine it with our own experts. The judge raised his hand for silence. The diary will be entered into evidence. As for bail revocation, he was interrupted by a commotion at the defendant's table. Diddy suddenly lunged toward the diary, his face contorted. With rage and fear, marshals immediately restrained him as he shouted, "That's not mine! That's not mine! They're setting me up!" It was the first crack in the carefully constructed image he had maintained. Throughout the trial, the judge banged his gavel repeatedly. Order! Order in the court! When the room finally quieted, he spoke with steely resolve. In light of the defendant's outburst and the content of this evidence, bail is revoked. The defendant will remain in custody for the duration of this trial. Sean Diddy Combs was led away. Reporters rushed from the courtroom to break the news. The diary had changed everything. After a brief recess, proceedings continued. FBI Special Agent Melissa Rodriguez took the stand to provide context for the diary's contents. What makes this diary so significant, Agent Rodriguez explained, is how it confirms the systematic pattern of control and exploitation that victims have described throughout this investigation. Using carefully selected excerpts from the diary, prosecutors painted a picture of how Diddy's operation functioned. According to his own words, Agent Rodriguez testified, he maintained control through a sophisticated system of surveillance, blackmail, and strategic alliances. The defendant describes what he calls the circle. Agent Rodriguez continued, this was an inner group of trusted individuals. They helped maintain control over victims and ensured silence. The diary contained multiple references to recording devices hidden in his properties, particularly in bedrooms and bathrooms. One disturbing entry described the process. New artists or potential business partners, they would be invited to what seemed like normal industry gatherings, only to be guided to private rooms, where they were secretly recorded. In compromising situations, these recordings would later be used as leverage if individuals tried to break ties or speak out. The diary contains a dedicated section called Insurance, Agent Rodriguez continued, where the defendant cataloged what material he had, on which individuals, and notes on how to best use that material. If necessary, the agent explained, The diary corroborated statements from multiple witnesses. They described receiving threatening messages or having their careers suddenly derailed after trying to distance themselves from Diddy. One entry from 2018 explicitly states, reminded redacted about the Hampton footage. Suddenly she's much more cooperative about the contract terms. Agent Rodriguez read, this matches exactly with witness 14's testimony about how she was pressured to sign a disadvantageous contract after being threatened with release of compromising footage. The diary also detailed a network of properties, some owned through shell companies, used for activities away from public scrutiny. These locations were referred to as safe houses in the diary, with notations about which were clean, free of recording devices, and which were wired, equipped with hidden cameras and microphones. Perhaps most damning were the financial records, interspersed throughout the diary. Diddy meticulously tracked payments to what he called silence maintenance, regular deposits to various individuals who had witnessed or been victimized by his actions. The defendant wasn't just paying people off, the prosecutor explained during questioning. He was keeping them financially dependent on him, ensuring they couldn't afford to speak out. Agent Rodriguez confirmed. Financial records obtained during the investigation matched many payments noted in the diary, creating a paper trail that corroborated the written account. As this testimony continued, Diddy sat unnaturally still, his expression frozen, in a mask of controlled panic. The confident demeanor he had maintained throughout the trial had completely evaporated. His eyes darted between his attorneys, the diary on the evidence table, and the exits, as if calculating his chances of escape. By the time Agent Rodriguez finished her testimony, the diary had transformed from a single piece of evidence into the keystone that connected all other aspects of the case. The testimonies, the financial records, the surveillance footage, the threatening messages. It wasn't just Diddy on trial anymore. It was an entire system of power and exploitation. As the testimony about the diary continued, the courtroom was riveted by an unexpected witness called to the stand. Jason Mitchell, a former security specialist. He had worked for Diddy from 2010 to 2019. He approached the witness box with measured steps, his expression grim but determined. Mitchell had not been on the original witness list, the prosecution explained. He had come forward only after hearing about the diary's discovery, finally convinced the truth would come out, regardless of his silence. I was responsible for security at Mr. Combs's properties, Mitchell testified. But that didn't just mean protecting him from outside threats. It meant ensuring that what happened inside stayed inside. His testimony corroborated many of the systems described in the diary. Mitchell explained. He had been instructed to install recording devices throughout Diddy's properties, focusing on bedrooms and gathering areas where guests would feel most relaxed and uninhibited. We had a protocol, Mitchell explained. High-value targets, meaning celebrities or industry executives Mr. Combs wanted leverage over, would be directed to specific rooms. Sometimes we'd even manufacture situations, like pretending the plumbing was broken in their assigned room, to move them to the rooms we had prepared. Mitchell described how recordings would be reviewed, cataloged, stored in what staff referred to as the library, a secure digital archive, accessible only to Diddy and his most trusted associates. Mr. Combs would sometimes review these recordings personally, Mitchell testified. He would make notes about what could be used, who was vulnerable, who needed to be handled with care, because they had their own power. As Mitchell spoke, Diddy's attorney repeatedly objected, challenging the relevance and credibility of the testimony. Each time the judge overruled, noting that the testimony directly corroborated information found in the diary. Mitchell then revealed something, caused a stir in the courtroom. He had been the one who installed the safe, where the diary was found. Mr. Combs was paranoid about keeping certain things secure, Mitchell explained. He had me install that safe, behind a false wall, in the Miami house, in 2017. He said it was for documents that could burn down the whole industry if they ever got out. The prosecutor presented Mitchell with photographs of the burnt safe. He confirmed it was the one he had installed, recognizing specific security features he had customized at Diddy's request. Did Mr. Combs ever tell you what he kept in this safe? The prosecutor asked. He said it contained his insurance policy, Mitchell replied. He told me, if anything ever happened to him, I should access the safe, using a code only he and I knew, and deliver its contents to a specific attorney. He said it contained enough information to ensure that if he went down, everyone who ever crossed him would go down too. This statement caused Diddy to visibly react. His composure finally broke completely. He leaned forward and whispered urgently to his attorney. Mitchell continued, explaining he had ultimately left Diddy's employment after witnessing incidents that troubled his conscience. He described gradually becoming aware. He wasn't just providing security, but was an active participant in a system of exploitation and control. The breaking point for me came in late 2019, Mitchell testified. His voice grew quieter. There was a situation with a young artist, couldn't have been more than 20 years old. I watched as Mr. Combs systematically isolated this person, created dependency, and then he paused, taking a deep breath. I saw the aftermath. I saw the person who walked into that house and the shell of a person who walked out 3 days later, and I knew I couldn't be part of it anymore. When asked why he hadn't come forward sooner, Mitchell's answer was simple and devastating. Fear. I've seen what happens to people who cross him. I've helped make it happen. And I knew too much. I wasn't just a witness. I was complicit. But when I heard about the diary being found, I realized there was finally a chance that the truth would come out, with or without me, and I couldn't live with myself if I stayed silent any longer. As Mitchell's testimony concluded, the diary had been transformed from a simple document into the center of a vast web of control, manipulation, and criminality, a web that, according to both the diary and this new witness, extended far beyond Diddy himself, to encompass numerous powerful figures in entertainment and beyond. After Mitchell's testimony, the courtroom atmosphere was electric. With tension, the prosecution called Dr. Eleanor Vasquez, a forensic psychologist. She specialized in analyzing written documents for evidence of psychological patterns. Dr. Vasquez approached the diary not just as evidence of specific crimes, but as a window into the mindset of its author. Her analysis of the final entry was particularly damning. What we see in these last writings, Dr. Vasquez testified, is an individual who has developed a profound sense of entitlement and power over others. The language repeatedly dehumanizes people, referring to them as assets, investments, and properties, rather than as individuals. She pointed to specific phrases from the diary that revealed a pattern of narcissistic control. They owe me everything. I created them from nothing. No one gets to walk away. These statements reflect a worldview in which other people exist, primarily as extensions of the writer's will. Dr. Vasquez explained, there's no recognition of others' autonomy or right to make their own choices. As this testimony continued, something unexpected happened. Diddy, who had been growing increasingly agitated, suddenly stood up. I want to speak, he announced. His voice cut through the courtroom. His lead attorney immediately grabbed his arm, trying to pull him back to his seat, whispering urgently. Diddy shook him off. Your Honor, Diddy said, addressing the judge directly. I need to address these lies. The judge's gavel came down sharply. Mr. Combs, you are represented by counsel. If you wish to testify, That will happen in the proper order of proceedings. That's not my diary, Diddy insisted, ignoring the warning. That's not my handwriting. This is a setup. The judge banged his gavel again. Mr. Combs, sit down immediately, or you will be removed from the courtroom. Diddy remained standing, his composure completely gone. You don't understand, he continued, his voice rising. There are people who want me silenced. Powerful people. This is a conspiracy. Remove the jury, the judge ordered. The 12 jurors were quickly ushered out. As Diddy continued to speak, once the jury was gone, the judge addressed Diddy directly. Mr. Combs, this outburst is completely inappropriate. You are represented by capable counsel. This is not the time for you to address the court. Diddy's attorney stood. Your Honor, we request a brief recess to confer with our client. 3 minutes. The judge agreed. Court was recessed for 30 minutes. When proceedings resumed, the atmosphere had changed dramatically. Diddy sat silently, beside his attorneys. His previous confident demeanor was gone entirely. He looked defeated, almost shell-shocked. His lead attorney addressed the court. Your Honor, in light of the evidence presented today, we request a brief adjournment to discuss potential resolution options with the prosecution. The legal language was clear. To everyone in the courtroom, they were opening the door to plea negotiations. The prosecutor responded with surprising firmness. Your Honor, given the severity of the crimes detailed in the evidence and the defendant's apparent willingness to threaten witnesses, even from within these proceedings, the people are not interested in a plea arrangement at this time. We intend to proceed with the full prosecution. The judge then made an announcement, sent murmurs through the courtroom. In light of today's evidence, I am ordering a special security protocol for this diary. It will be placed under 24-hour guard, with access restricted to essential court personnel only. Additionally, I am ordering the U.S. Marshals to provide protection for all witnesses who have testified or are scheduled to testify in this case. He looked directly at Diddy. Let me be absolutely clear. Any attempt to interfere with witnesses or evidence in this case will be met with the full force of this court's authority. As the day's proceedings drew to a close, the final confrontation wasn't just between Diddy and the justice system. It was between a man who had believed himself untouchable and the reality that his own words might finally bring his empire crashing down. The diary, rescued from flames, meant to destroy it, had become the voice of countless victims who had been silenced for too long. The impact of the diary's discovery rippled outward, like a shockwave, through the entertainment industry and beyond. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Legal experts attempted to explain the significance of what had transpired inside. What we witnessed today wasn't just a turning point. In the case against Sean Combs, said legal analyst Maya Richardson to a crowd of cameras, it potentially represents a watershed moment for how we understand power dynamics. In the entertainment industry, this diary doesn't just implicate one man. It suggests an entire system of exploitation, protection, and silence. Social media exploded with reactions as news of the diary's contents began to leak. The hashtag #ChargeDiddyDiary trended worldwide. Many expressed shock, while others sadly noted rumors of such behavior had circulated for years, largely dismissed or ignored. Perhaps most telling was the immediate reaction from certain high-profile celebrities and executives. Within hours of the diary being entered into evidence, at least 3 private jets departed from Los Angeles, bound for countries with limited extradition treaties. Though no official connection was established, the timing was difficult to dismiss as coincidental. Major entertainment companies issued carefully worded statements, distancing themselves from Diddy. Many emphasized their commitment to creating safe work environments, and zero tolerance for abuse of power. Statements that rang hollow to critics, who pointed out these same companies had maintained close business relationships with Diddy. For decades, despite persistent rumors, former employees and associates began coming forward with their own stories, no longer afraid of retaliation. Now that the protective shield of fear was cracking, social media filled with accounts from people who claimed they had witnessed concerning behavior, but had been afraid to speak out. Law enforcement sources, speaking on condition of anonymity, confirmed that the names mentioned in the sealed portions of the diary had triggered multiple new investigations across several jurisdictions. There were reports of search warrants being executed at properties belonging to high-profile entertainment executives, and at least one elected official, mental health professionals, and victim advocates appeared on news programs discussing the psychological impact of systems of control, like the one described in the diary, explaining how power imbalances, especially in glamorous industries like entertainment, could create environments where abuse flourished, undetected or unchallenged. For those watching from outside the industry, the revelations forced uncomfortable questions about the celebrities and content they consumed. Had they been unwittingly supporting a system that enabled exploitation? How many successful careers and hit songs had been built on foundations of abuse and coercion? As night fell on that momentous day, Diddy was transferred to a higher security facility, his bail revoked. The man who had once moved through the world with the confidence of someone who believed himself untouchable was now confined to a cell, his empire crumbling around him. The diary, that simple leather-bound book that had survived a fire meant to destroy it, had accomplished what years of rumors, whispers, and isolated accusations could not. It had connected the dots, transforming separate incidents into a clear pattern, too powerful to ignore or dismiss. Legal experts predicted the trial would continue for weeks, possibly months, but something fundamental had shifted. The question was no longer whether Diddy would face consequences for his actions, but how many others would fall with him, and how deeply the entertainment industry would be forced to examine its darkest corners. As one survivor, who had previously testified against Diddy, told reporters, the diary proves what many of us have been saying for years, that this wasn't just about one man's actions. It was about a system that protected predators and silenced victims. Maybe now people will finally believe us. The story is far from over. Investigators continue to work through the names and incidents detailed in the diary. More revelations are certain to come. But one thing is clear: the wall of silence that protected powerful abusers for decades has begun to crumble, and the entertainment industry will never be quite the same.